Yo, 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 yo. What's up, all you burners, stoners, and potheads, and especially all you gardeners out there? This is Mr. Weedman and Big Girl with the Grow Hour. Big Girl, my brother, how the hell are you?
What's up? I'm good, dude. How are you?
Good. You want to know why?
Why? Tell me.
Because it's Friday. We're recording on a Friday, and I'm getting baked with my buddy Big Earl and Wolfman. Wolfman, say hello to everybody out there.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me, guys. Good to be on the show.
We're super stoked to have you on, brother, because we're going to do something really cool. We're going to talk about hash. Hash.
Yeah, buddy.
I'm so stoked. So before we get started with the show, we're all going to get stony baloney with a little hash sesh. Big Girl, what you smoking on?
I'm smoking some Gorilla Glue Crust of Stanky Haze. The number 9, I had a buddy who got a few of the pheno, and he said, man, that 9 has this like metallic to it. And I was like, dude, I didn't pick that up, so I had to come back to it. But
Nice.
What are you smoking on? Putting it right there in your guy.
I am smoking some hash in honor of Wolfman Jack here. Wolfman Jack, I'm smoking some Terp Cherry that was sent to me by my friend and our friend Big Earl, Straight A Genetics.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
So, and this is one of his strains, the cherry that he's done and turned it into some hash that I'm going to learn how we make it. So I am super stoked, and this Puffco Proxy is pretty fantabulous. I suck at torching. I've burnt so much hash in my life because of this stupid torch. So I got myself one of these, and it's so nice because you just press the little button here. I have it all preset. And I'm gonna set it up, and look, it glows in the dark.
Man,
it's so
cool.
It's so nifty.
That's so fancy.
And then I hit start, and then it buzzes, and then it does disco lighting for me. It's like yeah, man, and then it tells me when it's done. It look at the colors, pretty nice, right? Almost as nice as your fire there, Wolfman. And so now it's ready.
That kind of reminds me of the Magic Butter Machine. The Magic Butter Machine, you throw your shit in there, it makes butter or fucking teas or whatever the fuck you want to make out of weed or even mushrooms. But it does like a little dance and it has lights. Like at least mine have. I think I have mine from the first generation.
So I have it set at 510. Oh, that was a big one. And set for 40 seconds of just ripping. And it's pretty nice. And I usually share it with Mrs. Weedman, and we share the timer, but this is like the easiest thing ever. It's set in, forget it. So I'll be baked as fuck because usually I take 2 rips and give the rest to Mrs. Weedman to take 2 rips. But the taste on this, because I keep it at 510. I also have, if I want more taste, more flavor, I go down to like 480. If I want more of a rip, a hot rip, I go up to like 530, 550. But I like it around 500, 510 most of the time because it gives me that perfect balance between rip and flavor. That's usually the way I do it. So, but this is good stuff. So Straight A Genetics, I love you. Thank you for the Terp Cherry. And then our honored guest, our hash maker, our friend, Wolfman Jack, baby. What you got there smoking there?
Oh, man, I'm smoking on some train wreck grown by yours truly, Big Earl, man. And this stuff is so lemony.
Ooh.
So lemony. It's like a fresh squeezed lemon. But I don't have no fancy ways to smoke it. I'm old school still, I guess you could say. So we're doing what's called a bottle toke. Some of you might know what that is.
Those are cool.
Some of you might not.
Yeah.
While you're doing your bottle toke, we can probably explain that. So I'll explain while you're ripping and people are watching you do this. What is a bottle toke?
So basically a bottle toke is you're using the heat source from either a cigarette, a blunt, or a burning joint to burn your hash. And you put your hash on only the ash part of what's burning, not on the paper, or you waste it. And all of the heat energy goes into burning the hash almost at the perfect temperature, around 450, 480, give or take. And you collect the smoke in a bottle like this, and once the hash is done burning, the smoke will get very thin, and that's whatever else is burning starts burning again, basically. You could pull your cigarette or joint or whatever out and take your bottle toke just like it is a shotgun.
It works very well. When the first time Wolfman came over, we're like smoking a joint or something. He's like, "Oh, this is how I smoke." And I was like, "Bro, I've never seen that tech before." We're like going through it. I usually do it with a square, but we had a joint going, So we're smoking a joint, taking these dab rips out of the bottle. I'm blazed
Yeah,
by the
we
time
got pretty ripped
I
that
don't
day.
do a lot of dabs. Yeah, we did. Two or three dabs, 2 or 3 joints. It's like, oh shit.
So when I first started smoking hash back in like the late 80s, 90s, there was all different ways. You used to just light it up and dab it on your rolling papers. Some people would put it in their hands and put it in between their joint, or chunk it up and put it in their joint. I never did. And I saw people do it, but I didn't like it. I always felt like they burnt it.
The hot
They
knife
did the knife
thing.
on the stove,
Oh,
on the electric stove, the hot knife. I hated
they
that.
wasted so much.
I hated that. But the way, and it was always burnt. It always tasted like fucking like nasty resin out of your bowl that you lit up because you were broke as fuck and didn't have any weed. So,
wasn't worth
but
smoking.
a way a buddy of mine taught me, So a way the buddy of mine taught me in like '94, he got those little artichoke heart jars, the little ones.
Yeah.
You ever see those before? Okay, so he would take a nail, a small little like wall nail, and pop it through the cap, right? And then he would put a dollop of hash on the nail tip, right?
Yeah.
Then he would take the jar, and he would put the jar over it, right? But then take a match and put the match in between the jar and the lid and light it and leave the jar open a little bit because you need the oxygen to get in there to keep the match lit. And it would just lightly on it. Like it wasn't even like a hot match. It was like made sure that wood match was not like toasting it. And all of a sudden there'd be a big, nice puff of fucking smoke in there. And he would just go lift it and smoke it. And that's how I really figured out how and how much more I really liked hash, because it made the experience of smoking it a hell of a lot different than a hot knife. And joint was fine, on the rolling papers and shit too. But that was a way I really learned how to smoke hash. I mean, I smoked it in a bowl, but it never really lit right. You know what I'm saying? Because it burned it to shit most of the time. You never got the flavor of what hash should be. But in that fucking artichoke heart jar, dude, it changed my whole way of experience with hash.
That's
so, but that
cool.
bottle, I've never seen that bottle technique before.
I love the bottle technique.
Yeah,
it's
I've
like
never seen that bottle technique.
Rip, honestly.
Yeah.
And that's a Pall Mall menthol I was smoking, and you don't taste it at all. Even non-smokers and stuff, like, they don't taste it at all because the tobacco stops burning at that point. All of the heat energy goes into burning the hash, which is actually flammable.
That's pretty fucking. That's it. I've never seen that. Anybody out there in the world, if you're listening and you do that technique, send me a picture of you doing it, a DM or something on my Instagram, because I'd love to see other people doing that. If not, if no one knows that technique, well, hopefully you learned something from Mr. Wolfman over here.
It's an easy on the go way to smoke, man, because you always could pick up a 20-ounce anywhere.
I love it. Well, now that I'm getting fucking hash baked, let's have some fun. So, who the fuck are you, Wolfman Jack? Who the fuck are you, and why the fuck hash?
Oh man, I'm just a regular dude, man, and I got an amazing wife, and she's got a best friend from college, and I guess it all kind of really got put on steroids when her best friend got cancer. And she was unable to eat. She lost so much weight, down to like 80 pounds. And I brought her some weed to smoke. She'd never smoked before, blah, blah, blah. And within 10 minutes of me being over there and talking to her and telling her that cannabis is a good thing, this woman's eating. And that was kind of like waking up my eyes at the moment and realizing I could do this for a lot of people. And that was when I started making hash for other growers, and I started learning more about the process from wherever the hell I could, because there ain't no information that's good information out there, really. And just a whole lot of trial and error. I threw away just hundreds and hundreds of grams of hash, and to get to where we are now, basically.
Well, you sent me a picture earlier. You sent me a picture earlier of that hash you just made with Big Earl's train wreck, and I got to smoke the train wreck. So like flour train wreck, and that shit fucking train wrecked me, Big Earl, and Mrs. Weedman. Remember that Big Earl?
Oh yeah.
So I need to try that. I need to try that train wreck hash because if it did what that did to me on the flour side, woo.
Just imagine everything enhanced. The terpenes, the smell, the potency, it's all just enhanced and made better.
Yeah. It was pretty. It was pretty. So what are you doing now?
Oh man, I'm doing a lot for Big Earl actually. I've been making a lot of fresh frozen bubble hash for him. We're getting ready to press this weekend actually. I also started to planted some seeds for him. 3 different strains. I got Fur OG, I got the Berry and Peaches, and a back cross of the Stanky Haze. Very excited about that one. I know he is too.
Yes. The Stanky Haze.
The Stanky Haze back
The
cross.
Stanky Haze is just stanky. I've smoked two different Stanky Haze grows, and then I've smoked how many Stanky Haze crosses now? Like 3 or 4 or some shit. I've smoked of that too. Yeah, the Stanky Haze GG4 impressed a lot of people. Just so you know, the cross on that. Yeah, I mean, people like that one. So you got some good little. I saw you sent us a picture. I saw that all your plants. You got some good fucking. You got a lot.
Hell yeah.
So is hash more your preferred consumption versus flour or anything else? Are you just like you strictly smoke hash now, or I mean?
A long time ago, I switched to hash only, and strictly because I had to smoke so much flour to get to where I wanted to be. It was costing me a fortune, and it was wasting a lot of time, and the smell I just constantly smelled, and everybody would complain at like work and stuff, and it would be a problem, and a hash just made sense because it's straight, it's to the point, and if it's made correctly, to me it's the same as flour. It's just stronger.
Yeah, that's the big thing right there. That's why we thought it'd be great to have you on, because it's like when we first talked, I was hoping you were going to run my hash and you were real busy, or my flour and you were real busy, and time kind of progressed and we smoked a couple times together, I think, and you had some space open up. I was like, yes.
Yep.
And but when we talked, it was obvious to me, like I've been around for a while. I blasted butane into a Pyrex fucking glass over, hot ass water, and hand pump purged that shit,
Yep.
And
it was like 20 years ago, man.
Back when everything mattered. Yeah, a little sparkle didn't matter much. And man, dude, we were just trying to get high back then. We were just kids, But talking with you about it, it was obvious there's a huge difference here. And especially when you're talking about having the wax, just the dabs, the wax, anything you want to call it, just adds this extra layer on, right? Because it's like at first when you're growing weed, it's like, okay, how do I pop seeds? How do I veg? How do I flip to flower? How do I hunt sex? Whatever. Then you get to the end of it and you think you're done, but you're not. You got to dry it right. You got to cure it right.
Yep.
Then you get
past
that. You want to do wax. You're not done yet. Yeah, you got to do that whole process. Has to be either frozen or done in a way to preserve this and that, and so it just adds like another layer to the art form kind of thing. So
it's a whole another step to learn, and there's way too much to learn, and it changes every day. It's crazy.
It's an art form. It is, because some of the hash I'm seeing now from the hash that I smoked in like 88, 89 into like, shit, till I moved up here from down south, and way different.
2 different worlds. I was getting
some. Well, I was getting some black Jamaican hash, and I was getting hash from Morocco, but the hash from Jamaica was just like holy shit. It was like fucking tar.
Oh,
it was tar. I mean, it was. It came in a pretty big supply too, but shit was tar. Just straight up, just so tarry.
It's hard to
but it was
smoke
good.
that stuff.
It got you high as fuck. But it was after a while though, man. Like you would be coughing up like black shit out of your lungs for a while after that. I mean, I smoked a lot of it, so I mean, it was just different. And when you got it, you just hoarded it, and it was delicious, And the high was, like you said, it's way different. And but what is fucking hash though? We're talking about it, but there might be people that listen that don't know what hash is and like kind of like its history. It's been around for a long time, a long time.
Very long time.
And but people, I've talked about hash on the Chronicles, the other show that we do, and did some history about hash. But you make it. So what is it? And like, what's a little bit of the history of it? And why does like you said, why you use it in place of flour sometimes, but like. Shoot the shit, man. Tell us a little bit. I want to know. I want to learn.
A little bit of the history that I know is it's been around for just thousands of years. They've found this stuff in damn near everything on this planet, and honestly, there's basically two kinds of hash. The main kind that's been around for the longest is going to be collected trichomes or resin glands, typically as dry sift or bubble hash nowadays. The second kind, which is a little more pure, a little more processed, is extracted essential oil in the form of BHO or rosin. Rosin is a solventless extract made by heat press. So we're basically taking all of the things that they did back in the day with dry sift, and in Afghanistan and Iraq and everywhere they dry sift and screen everything in large quantities, and nowadays in America we're based on purifying everything as much as possible. So the hash is getting much different, it's getting much stronger, it's getting much lighter in color because you're removing all of these extra things from it. That doesn't make it any different, any better, any worse. It's just a different type of hash, which there are many forms of hash in this planet. And actually, they're all amazing. I like to make all of them. A little bit here, a little bit there. I haven't had this one in a while. Let's make it. Why not? Get high as fuck. You got to do some testing, right?
I'm the edible tester in the house, so yeah, I've gotten high as fuck from eating way too many edibles.
Dude, I cannot make edibles anymore because my wife has a tolerance. I shit you not, she would eat 1,000 milligram edible and not do any and function like she's normal. It's amazing.
She has that protein enzyme that blocks everything from her liver. So yeah, I get that. But I Mrs. Weedman makes some phenomenal edibles. But go ahead. Sorry, big girl, you were gonna say something.
I can't remember. I can tell you a hilarious edible story though. One time we were using keef and we are just putting in some brownie mix. So easy, put in some brownie mix. That shit has to bake. It'll decarb. The keef in there, you can mix it in real nice. You get a pretty nice like even serving. So I'm at work and we're going to this event. I'm like, hey, we should make some brownies. So I called my wife and I'm like, we make some brownies, put like, I don't know, 2 or 3 grams in the whole thing, just assuming it's 500 to 600 milligrams a gram. Well, the scale I has 2 covers to it, and the second cover was on, and she didn't realize it. And so she makes them, and we take them, and it was only me and another person there. I won't say the relationship who it was, but I ate it. I was like, man, this is kind of earthy. Man, I like fell out of the car. I was so stony when I got home. Like literally, I got so paranoid sitting there because I'm sitting there at this house, and I turned to my wife. I'm like, "Can we please go?" She's like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "I don't know," And so we get home. Well, long story short of it, it comes a day or two later. I can't remember exactly when we put all the pieces together. The second cover wasn't off the scale. We started talking about how much she put in there. And she's like, well, I couldn't quite fit all of that on the scale. And I was like, so how much did you put? I put as much as I could put on the scale.
Oh,
I was like,
no.
Well, probably like, 20 grams or something went into it. And it was like that makes so much sense. Cause I had 2 1-inch by 1-inch pieces. And I was on like crawled out of the car, fell onto my knees out of the car. Like, are you okay?
You weren't
like,
eating brownie. You weren't eating brownie. You were just eating straight keef.
Dude.
That's
Yeah.
There's no brownie in that fucking.
With a little bit of brownie mix, maybe.
The brownie was a binder to all that fucking keef that went.
It was like getting caught in his throat and he tried to eat it.
It tastes like straight earth. So like definitely, you know, the other person that ate it, I felt so bad because he ended up like in the shower, like kind of having a bad time. And I was like, just keep the tray and you know, because it's like a high dosage. It's like just take small bites. We know what it is now. I think he enjoyed the rest of that tray, but like, dude, it was that's a little bit off, but it was made with hash. So be careful eating edibles. You know, like slow, know what you're doing, what you're putting in there, make sure your shit is right because you go a few grams isn't much. You know, like a few
Start
grams
low and go slow.
Percent of a percent of a pound.
Too much.
Like yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like it's
especially keef.
Yeah.
So Big Earl told us how Mrs. Earl makes edibles, but how the fuck do you make hash?
Oh,
how's
man.
It made?
There's many ways to make hash. It depends on what type of hash you're making. So it starts off with dry sift, and that's everybody knows that we've all had them little grinders with the little keef tray in the bottom that gets clogged after like 2 grinds, and they make those in big versions where you can sift all your trim and all that stuff and process what comes from that or just smoke that as it is. A very popular form nowadays is bubble hash. Everybody's doing it. It's very affordable for the home grower to get into. They could perfect it and make some very, very high quality hash at home. In the let's see here, BHO. Ooh, BHO is a touchy subject.
We all suck. A lot of people suck. A lot of people suck with acronyms. What's BHO stand for?
Oh, sorry.
I suck with acronyms.
Butane hash oil. So you don't necessarily.
Thank you. I knew, but some people out there might not have.
Sorry. Yep. So BHO is a controversy, basically. Everybody thinks that it could end up as a dirty product, and there's bad practices, and there's people making bad product. But if it's made properly, BHO is an absolutely amazing product and will be very flavorful, extremely, extremely potent, and just absolutely wonderful. It all depends on the person, really. What kind of hash that they would like to smoke, they would like to make, and honestly, how much money they're trying to invest to make that hash. That plays a big factor too, because a lot of this stuff is very expensive to get into, and it's a huge initial cost in order to produce what you see everybody on Instagram and other social media producing. You can half-ass the equipment and you're going to produce half-ass hash.
Yeah. So, sorry, go ahead.
Most.
I was going to ask a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Hold on, real quick. With BHO, now I've said this a lot of times with butane. I nothing against it. A lot of people like. I remember when I first tried shatter and I first tried wax, and people I'm like asking people how they. This was like 2015, 2014. I was asking people how you made it. Like, oh, butane. We use it over in our And I'm like, oh, okay. But the one thing I always felt like every time I tried it was I always felt like I tasted the butane. I didn't say it was bad. It just overpowers my palate, kind of like metallic. I'm very sensitive to metallic. Mm-hmm. Like I could taste metal, especially when I drink a beer, like a sour, and it's got that, it's been fucking done wrong, and you could taste metal. Like I'm sensitive to that because I smoked cigarettes for a long time too. So I'm sensitive to fucking butane. Is there a way to take that taste out of there?
There definitely is.
Or is people doing it wrong?
People are doing it wrong. If you have a metal taste or a bad taste or burning taste or any kind of taste like that, that's because you have trapped fats, lipids, waxes, and even chlorophyll or possibly plant matter in your BHO. And that's going to cause a burning taste in your throat. It's going to be harsh to smoke. And it also contaminates your final product. You're trying to purify the essential oil from the plant matter. And if you're bringing extra stuff with that essential oil, you're not purifying it enough, and you're smoking crap that you don't need to, that has no medicinal benefits and no need to be smoking.
So somebody could be sensitive to it and maybe taste it a little bit, even if now, like, there's certain percents, I'm assuming, like the dispensaries and stuff have to be under, or that side of the market.
There is, and if you ever look those up, the numbers are very scary. What the allowed numbers in BHO for most places are. Me personally, I try and over process any BHO that I make in order to ensure that I got every last bit of butane that I can out of that product. And that's using heat and vacuum in a vacuum oven. Most people don't do that. They'll use just heat, or they'll even just use the water bath, and they don't use enough time. Time and heat will definitely evaporate all that butane from that product. But if it's a dirty product filled with fats, lipids, and waxes that you can actually see with the naked eye, it's going to trap a lot of that butane in the product. And you're going to end up having a very hard time passing tests or getting rid of that taste for somebody like you to enjoy that product.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Because that's why I always wondered why. I always felt like it was just not done right, for me to have to taste that. Same thing with a sour beer. Why I tasted metallic in it, because it got like it was a bad batch, or it got functified, and you got that metallic taste, and you knew it. You're like, oh God, did I just eat a fucking can, a steel can, or something? I'm chewing
that's
on
what it tastes like.
And and I've had some hash from cultivators, and I listen, if you use butane or use PHO and all that stuff, petroleum based stuff too, I mean, sometimes like you said, you don't process it right. So I can taste stuff, and it's like, that's not what I want to taste.
No,
I want to taste what I'm supposed to be tasting. And that's the terps, that's the flavor, that's the flavonoids, that's the esters, that's everything that's in that plant that I want to be tasting, and smelling too, because I can smell it too now, butane, pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
But tasting it is fucking god awful.
A lot of the problem is the butane that is used for a lot of extractions nowadays, especially from any of the home growers, because they'll buy a case of canned butane, and inside each one of those cans, it's supposed to be pure, 99.9% pure, but there's oils from transfer pumps and stuff that are trapped in those cans. And if you run it through a closed loop system and distill all that butane from those cans, you can see all of the stuff that ends up in your extract. Any closed loop extractor or good butane hash oil maker will buy either N-butane or isobutane, which is food grade. So that means it is 100% pure, and the way that they fill the tanks is with a temperature difference instead of pumps. So there is no chance of contaminants entering the tank that you are buying for food grade purposes. It makes a huge difference.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we're talking about some solvents, because when me and Mr. Widman talked about this, it's like, man, how do we even break it down? Like, do we know this enough to even break this down? I was like, well, we know for sure there's solvents and solvent lists. And butane being a BHO, being a solvent, so maybe we could like break down all the different types, or like the solvents and the solvent list methods. And then maybe we could, after that, go over some equipment and maybe some names and stuff, so we can know, we're walking into a dispensary, I'm going to buy a gram of this kind of hash. What does live, what does cured, what does all this mean? So we talked about some solvents, so we can get back to those, but solvent lists. What types of solvent lists, extracts, hash do we see?
Most solventless hash that you're going to see in the dispensary is going to be either hash rosin, flower rosin, live rosin, and these are all made with a press, usually either from flower or from bubble hash or sifted keef, dry keef. things like that. Um, Solventless is really honestly my favorite. I believe it has the most terpenes and the shit just gets you higher than shit. So why not? It's easy to make. Anybody at home can do it. You can perfect your skills. There's a ton of information. People like me are willing to help.
I have literally a little coffee maker sized one, and it doesn't have the best pressure. You can control how what it heats up to, and you can control how long it smashes. I mean, you
Yeah,
did a couple smashes; it didn't get me nothing.
yeah,
When I first got it, every morning I'd get up and press
every
something for my
day.
day. And then after a little while, I was like, oh, it's kind of a step and shit. But it was easy. So when you say a thing says live rosin, what does that mean?
So live anything is going to mean that the original starting material was frozen fresh. So there was no dry period at all. You freeze the material, literally cut it off the stem, throw it in a Ziploc, and put it in your freezer and wait for it to be extracted. Usually, with solventless, you're going to be doing bubble hash. You want to keep your temperatures very cold and preserve your terpenes as much as possible when doing this. After that, you'll be putting it into a press, or you could sell it as bubble hash, live rosin bubble hash. And normally you don't see that in a dispensary because it's kind of hard to keep on the shelf. You really need to store something like that in the fridge. Uh, Sometimes you'll see Keef. They'll sell it. A lot of times you'll get those pre-rolled joints and stuff, and they'll roll them in Keef. Very rarely have I seen it just by itself. You can't go to the store and get a freaking jar of Keef. That's kind of weird to see, I guess. That's not really what people want. That's not what the market wants. That's not what I would go in there for if I actually went.
Unless you're Big Earl and you want to make brownies, then you fucking go there and buy some Keef.
Really easy to make with Keef. I'm just so nice.
Big Earl will buy all the Keef.
Next time I make edibles, I'm coming over there, just having them do it.
We'll get you fucked up. That's for sure. So you said live rosin could be bubble hash too. What does rosin mean?
Rosin is just an extracted form of bubble hash. So it's the essential oil extracted from the bubble hash material. It's a purified form of bubble hash.
So then cured, what would cured mean if we saw like cured rosin or cured what?
If you saw cured, that will typically either it's going to say cold cured or it's going to say cured flower rosin. If it says cold cured, that's describing the curing process after it was made. If it says flower rosin, that's describing what it was made from. It was pressed from straight flowers. So you're going to get a lot more of the cannabinoids, the terpenes, just all of the wonderfulness in that rosin. But it's not going to be as pure as a hash rosin would be. It's not going to be as strong as a hash rosin would be. You're not going to get those high THC numbers that everybody's looking for when they shouldn't be.
That deep golden drip.
Yep. They need to be looking at those.
What he said.
What we made was cured
flower rosin. Yes. Because
flower rosin.
We were pressing cured flowers, which is the same hash that I'm smoking now. It was pressed from cured flowers.
Yeah.
Absolutely my favorite.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Weedman's got it right. It's the best, man. I mean, you can't go wrong with it. If you like smoking weed, you'll love smoking flower rosin. That's just how it is. You can't beat it.
So good.
Dab after
the worst part for me, the best part's everything, but the worst part for me was figuring out because I don't do tests with my strains, was figuring out like, oh, I really love this plant, but it doesn't squish for shit.
Yep.
Or like that brandy pie. When we squished that, that's like one of my favorite fucking strains, but it didn't squish shit. And I was like, oh, that's like. But then the nightmare was like, like half
another
the
good
damn weight
strain.
almost.
Another good strain.
There's so many
Nightmare
factors
OG.
that go into it, though. You can't get discouraged, really. You could grow the same strain 10 times and have 10 different presses every single time. It's really learning to identify what's going to press well by looking at it under a microscope, because there is a way to tell. It's all about trichome development when you're making any kind of hash, whether it be solventless or solvent hash, or even RSO using ethanol or something. It's all based on trichome production and the amount of essential oil that's present in the plant matter. Because you're not going to be able to extract what's not there. You're not going to press out what's not there unless you're pressing too hot and with way too much pressure. Then you're going to extract a whole bunch of extra stuff. And that's not hash, that's extra stuff that we don't need, that looks like hash.
That makes sense, because every time I give you any kind of weed, you send me a picture of it all zoomed in. And so it's like you're just checking. You're like, hey, this is going to be good, or I think this is going to be good, or I think this probably won't be a good one.
Yeah, my microscope. I'm looking at trichome development and coverage and how big the heads are, how much of a mushroom they look like. That all plays a huge role.
Have you ever seen diatomaceous earth? I've never even thought to ask you that. Have you ever seen diatomaceous earth on any of the flowers?
No, I haven't actually, because I do inspect anything that I work with. I look at it pretty closely. I look for bugs. I look for animal hair, anything I don't want in the extraction, because we're trying to create clean medicine, even if it's just for us. I don't do what I do for money. I do what I do for product to smoke. So it makes it more important to me to produce a cleaner, more pure product instead of more quantity, if that makes sense. Because it's the only thing that we smoke. It makes me focus all of my attention on bettering my skills. And that's all I've ever done the instant I first learned how to make hash.
Yeah, that makes me feel great, because that's a technique that I use. I don't spray anything in flower, but I use that product because it stays on the plant and because it can add some pest resistance later in the flowering life, so I can see it on the stems while it's flowering. And I've always thought, I wonder if there's a contamination there or if there's something going on there I can't see. But the flowers don't form for like 2 or 3 weeks after I spray it, so it's all brand new growth by the time the flowers are forming. So I should maybe ask you that off recording in case you were like, oh yeah, I see it all over the place. I'm like,
fuck. No, if it wasn't, if you honestly, because I know that's what you use and I know that's what it probably would be, I would ask you first, but it would be easily washed off or rinsed off even. And then the flowers would be either re-dried or frozen for later processing.
Yeah.
So there's always ways to do things, and there's right and wrong ways. Unfortunately, a lot of this business, a lot of people, a lot of dispensaries are doing things wrong, and just for greed. And it's put a bad name on a lot of good hash products, unfortunately. Let's talk some more about hash.
Yeah.
Well, let's do one last solvent. Will you talk about that temple ball?
Temple ball.
Oh, I saw a picture of that.
Yeah, temple ball you left me.
Wolfman, I saw a picture of that, man. Oh my goodness.
Man, I was really just having fun, man. I was high as fuck, honestly, and I was like, man, I left a little bit of this bubble out from when I pressed all that shit for Big Earl and stuff. So I'm like, screw it, I'm gonna do a little Frenchy style temple ball, man. And I got me a little glass bottle with my hot water. I took about 6 more dabs, and I went to work on this temple ball. And just, you saw it. You'd had that beautiful marble to it, and that thing was like 2.4 awesome. Grams, man. I couldn't believe how fucking much it weighed. I never weighed it the whole time. I was playing with it and staring at it. I never weighed it.
I still got like half of it. I roll them in my joints. Delicious.
I need to smoke that, Earl. I'm so jealous. When I saw a picture of that, I was like, "Whoa,
dude! We can make more, bro."
Me wanty, me wanty.
Yeah. Are we forgetting anything on the solvent list side?
I don't think so. Dried flower.
Okay.
What about solvents?
Yeah.
For solvents, so
what about solvents?
I guess the first solvent that became most popular would be ethanol, and that became most popular with a good man named Rick Simpson. He made something called RSO, Rick Simpson oil, which is a very medicinal and amazing essential oil from the cannabis plant. It is full spectrum. It has everything, usually very dark in color, very thick like a tree sap or a maple syrup even, and it's used for all kinds of treatments. There's millions of studies about it. A lot of them, these fake doctors just don't want to believe, but the proof is out there and this shit works. Simple as that. They use
RSO's the shit.
RSO's the shit. And anybody can make it.
Good.
It's so easy to make. But I made it. A lot of people make it incorrectly. Any kind of extraction is all about temperature. You must keep a cold temperature. And a lot of RSO, you have to evaporate the ethanol. If you do that at too high of a temperature for too long, you're evaporating a whole bunch of the stuff you just tried to extract. So I go through and I teach people different ways to kind of make it and get people away from using isopropyl alcohol for anything, because isopropyl should not be used with any kind of extraction. It's only used for cleaning. It's a denatured alcohol.
Yeah, it's good. It's good to clean this.
Yeah, it's great to clean that. A little bit of salt, a little shake like it's a margarita. You're good to go.
It's great.
Oh yeah. And then we talked about butane, which is a solvent. What about propane? I've seen people do
you got some of that propane.
propane and propane accessories. So butane and propane are what's called hydrocarbons. They are a type of fossil fuel that's considered food safe. Everybody knows propane grills. The butane that we use is N-butane or isobutane, and the propane is not used by itself. It is very pure and it is very clean. Usually you'll find that in a 70-30 mix, 70% butane, 30% propane. And the reason they do that is back to temperature. Temperature is the most important thing with solvent extraction, whether it's butane, ethanol, whatever the hell you're doing, you have to keep a cold temperature for the best extraction possible. With a butane and propane mix, you're able to get those temperatures even that much colder, freezing the fats, lipids, and waxes and the chlorophyll in the actual plant matter in the material column, not even allowing it to move, to even think about being extracted. It allows for a very clean product. Typically, the home grower...
What about the carbon dioxide? Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, carbon dioxide, sorry. Carbon dioxide, we almost forgot about. This is one I don't know too much about. The main thing I know about carbon dioxide extraction is the equipment is expensive as hell. The licensing to do it is expensive as hell. And the pressure that you're operating at is very, very high. Several hundred psi or higher, if I'm not mistaken. Now, when I do a butane extraction, at most I'm maybe at 2 or 3 psi, and that's even when I'm boiling butane back into the tank to reuse. So the pressure differences make it a much more dangerous extraction and potential for explosion and damage to personnel or death even. So a lot of people will go with butane extraction, and they say that butane actually produces a much higher quality product. Now this is hugely debated and people are going to hate me for saying that, but it is what it is. And honestly, I've had a few CO2 products and they just weren't that good. But CO2 is considered a solventless extraction. Technically.
Real quick, is CO2 just a little bit cleaner? I've heard it's cleaner, but like I said, I'm not an expert on this at all. Just heard that it's cleaner than the butane, but it is harder to, like you said, way harder to buy the equipment, pressure. It seems like CO2 though stuff is a little like less flavorful.
So CO2
like
it's
extraction, like stale. It's like stale.
It is stale, and that's because the super cold temperature it's operating it at. You're not able to preserve those terpenes. It's getting them so cold you're evaporating a lot of those terpenes, and you're just not able to preserve the flavor that you wanted to, which is why a lot of people that start out with CO2 extraction will switch over to butane over time. It's very common. CO2 is actually considered a solventless extraction, if I'm not mistaken, in the dispensary world, because it is a non-flammable gas. You cannot light it on fire. It will not explode or burn like butane or propane will. It is not a hydrocarbon. So it is considered safer. What was that?
So things will light on fire with butane. I have seen fires chase across the kitchen because somebody lit an oven over there and somebody's blasting over here.
Oh yeah.
And by somebody crazy. I mean me in both cases. It's fucking nuts.
Butane is heavier than air, and so is propane. It falls to the floor and will sit there and pool inside of a room. And all of it takes is a small static electric charge from you touching a door handle or something. That's all it takes to ignite this stuff. And that's very scary for somebody learning off of YouTube and trying to get into butane extraction. It's dangerous, and there's many, many stories of people blowing themselves up because they just don't know what the fuck they're doing. And it's sad because there's better ways, safer ways for the home grower to make hash, and I hope they learn that with our show today.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So
what are
we talked a little bit about the different ways to make hash. Butane extraction, obviously, is made with either a closed loop extractor, or it could be done with just a simple glass tube that you're blasting butane through and collecting in a pan. Solventless is made with either keef trays or bubble bags and a wash machine or a rosin press. And there's many different types. There's very wide price range for those things, depending on how much and how serious you want to get. But personally, I always recommend people going solventless because it's safer. If you fuck up what you're doing, you can still smoke it. If you mess up butane extraction and you don't blow yourself up, you might not be able to smoke the end product because it tastes like metal. So It's easy
just
for
so
me
good.
on things like Instagram and stuff to encourage people to go solventless. I always tell people buy a press and buy an expensive one because it'll be the last one you ever buy and you'll fucking use it every single day. You'll press everything you ever grow and you'll want to go out and buy more flour so you could press more. It's that much fun and that much even more fun to test the end product.
I love it. I love it. What are some of the positives and negatives of it, and how do you typically consume it?
Ooh, positives and negatives. So let's do positives of solventless first. Ooh, positives of solventless are almost endless. It's cheap to produce. Anybody can do it with very minimal knowledge and have pretty damn good results the first few times. Um, the equipment is much cheaper than making solvent hash. Um, Probably the taste, the effect, as far as medicinal effect, I believe is probably stronger with a solventless extraction than it is a solvent extraction. The negatives,
Yeah.
the equipment is still expensive if you want to do large quantities, if you want to process for somebody, if you want to wash, 5, 10 pounds at one time, you're going to spend a lot of money on that equipment. And it's gonna cost you time and you're gonna have to learn how to use that equipment and have a place to store that equipment. So for the average home grower, you're probably not gonna get into processing, 100 pounds every month. It's just not feasible. You're just not gonna be able to do it in your pole barn or something. For butane,
Yeah.
which is the most common solvent used, we'll just kind of group that with all solvents. For butane extraction, there's quite a few negatives. Everything is super super expensive. If you don't have proper training, proper standard operating procedures, proper safety equipment, proper ventilation, the proper area to do it in, proper equipment to process it after you're done, it could be very unsafe. It could be very you could be creating a poisonous product that you're consuming yourself or even worse selling to other people with the assumption that it's a clean product and they're smoking it with no problem. Positives of butane hash, if it's made properly, you could just get some stupid absolute fire that reaches into the high 80s to early 90% of THC content and still have 2, 3, 4% terpene content where it just smacks you in the fucking face with terps. Is that hard to find? Yeah. I'd say 90% of dispensaries and butane extractors out there aren't trying to make a product like that because they have quotas to meet, they have money to make, they have products that they can't throw away. So they get into doing negative things, negative filtration methods that create horrible products and bad media attention for uneducated consumers to just soak up and not listen to anything else. So there's a whole bunch more negatives on BHO that we can go over, but as a hash maker, I make both and I make both equally and I smoke both equally. If I'm trying to get high as fuck real quick, I'm taking like 3 or 4 dabs of some BHO and being done with it. If I want to enjoy some terps and get a little bit of that entourage effect on top of being stoned as fuck with my THC, then I want to smoke something solventless. or maybe even take a bong rip of some of Big Earl's fine flower, which I don't usually smoke flower, but I started doing it again once I freaking met this guy, 'cause it's hard not to, man. It's hard not to. You stick your face in them bags and you're just like, yeah, I'll smoke that.
Never
Big Earl Big Earl
before.
brings the fire when he comes into town. He brings the fire when he comes into town. That's all I gotta say.
That makes me feel good because
wait till I come visit, bro. I hope I get to and make you some fresh press sometime. It'll be a good experience. We'll get too high and take a couple weed naps.
Yeah. That was the one thing about BHO. Like when I first started smoking BHO products, even though I didn't like the taste, this shit made me so geeky. Like I couldn't function. I'd just be dabbed out on the couch and not want to move for a couple hours, which isn't a bad thing.
Man.
But I mean, pressed rosin, fucking, hash. I still can function somewhat. Like I do the show pretty decently on hash, but fucking smoking straight up butane fucking hash or wax or shatter, dude, used to put me fucking out. Like I couldn't move, comatose, like like that kind of strength, power. It tasted like shit though, but got me fucking wrecked.
I like that you talked about the flower like that. Because I feel like a lot of times it is like I smoke hash because that flower can't get me high. And I think flower has this misconception because if you grow like the full expression of the flower and you get all the cannabinoids in there and you get all this different intricate shit that, like, I'm not saying presses don't get, I have no idea what presses do and don't get or what butane does and doesn't get. I'm just saying that I use them together. Like when I really want to get high, I go to a dab. Maybe I'm smoking a few dabs that day or that week. I got something new from you or something. And I'm like, I'm going to smoke a bunch of dabs. But when I really want to get high, then I go to my joint, and it's just like different for me. Is that how you felt with it? Is that like when you get to hash, like, cause you said before that you went to hash cause you were trying to get higher.
I was trying to get higher faster. Now, I definitely feel it's a different experience smoking flower compared to smoking hash by far. And I feel a difference in smoking rosin compared to smoking BHO. Not just the THC high effects, but the other effects that come along with that. The body effects, the mental effects, just everything as a whole. Each one is very, very different from each other. And depending on what I'm trying to feel that day is going to be based on what I'm smoking that day. And most of the time, what I want to feel is just a hash feeling. The flower feeling, I love smoking flower, but to get to the point, the flower level that I want to get to, I just had to smoke so much flower. It was getting old because I smoke cigarettes still. So, weed man, you know how that shit goes. You finish a cigarette, you smoke a joint. You finish a joint, well, now you got to smoke a cigarette, and it's just a never-ending cycle. With hash, like you smoke hash and you just get high.
Sure. No, it definitely gets you fucking high.
Mm-hmm. What are the health benefits, and why does hash just make you feel so different? We talked about this versus flower, and you kind of hinted on this, but I was talking a little bit earlier with you about this. It's that head to toe feeling for me when it comes to hash. Flower can either go right to my head or not to my head and go to my body. It depends on what strain I'm smoking. But hash, I've never not had a fucking went from head to toe, like tingle to the tip of my toe to the fucking tingling of the tip up here, So, but what are the health benefits though?
Personally, I think as long as it's made properly, a flower and a solventless hash is going to have the same health benefits. The solventless hash is just going to be a concentrated form of that flower. So look at it like drinking a glass of wine and drinking a glass of brandy made from the same fruit. It's going to be the same exact everything, except the brandy is going to be that much stronger with the smell, the flavor, the effect. So it could affect your whole entire body instead of just some of your body because there's that much more of the medicine that you're taking in at one time. It's a much higher dose. If you were able to smoke that joint in just one hit, it might feel like you just took a fat dab. We won't ever know that because nobody has lungs that fucking big. I've tried. I'm sure you have too.
Only maybe somebody like Tom and Jerry from the old cartoon days where they were able to take one rip and a fucking hit of a cigarette and blow it in a big cloud. That was about it. It's the only time I ever seen anybody hit a fucking.
my boy was Marvin
like
the
that
Martian.
as a cartoon.
Marvin the Martian was the shit, man.
Oh yeah.
You know, he would have some kind of crazy device to smoke hash with, and it would probably just get us all way too high.
The ray gun. Yeah.
Not right, bro.
Oh shit. So like there's major health benefits to it, we know, because you're getting that concentrated hash, that concentrated terpenes, the concentrated everything. And it makes, we all know what we've talked about, how the feeling it gets you compared to flour. How do you store it? That's the thing I think a lot of people don't understand. I mean, the new stuff that you're making now, I was told you got to keep it in the fridge, like the new type of stuff compared to hash when I was getting a long time ago. I never kept that shit in the fridge. I kept it in the fucking cold closet.
So, depending on what it is really depends on how you want to store it. Any kind of dry product like a dry sift or even I would probably still store bubble in the fridge, but a dry sift, you could just leave that stored in a drawer at room temperature in a sealed container. Everything needs to be sealed. Temperature, air exposure, and light all will degrade your material over time. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be flour, could be hash of any kind. All those things are going to degrade your material. So you want to stop that from happening. Me personally, I store all of my hash in the fridge. It's first in a silicone container, and that's inside of a glass mason jar in order to stop any kind of extra oxygen getting to that. Eventually, all of the oxygen in this jar will go away and stop, and it actually helps to further cold cure my hash while it sits in there.
Wow, I did not know that.
That's why
I did not know the jar. The jar. Holy shit. I learned something really newer than I've learned on this whole fucking show.
Hold on. Let me go off camera for a second here.
Yeah, that's...
Dude, so you could store that shit in the fucking 8 decades jars.
It looks just like this. A freaking silicone container inside of a mason jar. And then you just line that up in your fridge. You pop this shit open. And oh my God, Big Earl smelled this. This is my apple blossom strain from Humboldt. And it smells like fresh flowers and green apples. It's absolutely amazing.
I want some fresh flowers and green apple. What the fuck you doing over there, Wolfman Jack?
I grew this thing out like 7 times, dude. And the only way that I got rid of it is when I met Big Earl, he gave me a strain called Peach Stank, and I fucking fell in love with the Peach Stank. Absolutely. Peach Stank I pressed it out. And I couldn't stop smoking it. Everything that I pressed out, I smoked it in like one freaking try. And the wife loved it. It tasted like peach schnapps, man, from back in the 90s, you know, when we were stealing it from our parents and shit. Absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I love that one. I knew that one was going to be special real fast. I appreciate you.
It's so new, unique, man. I can't wait to smoke more of it.
Oh, I can't wait to throw my hash in a fucking jar and put it in the fridge. What temperature do you keep the fridge at? What temperature does it need? Could it be just
standard temperature? whatever the normal range,
40,
usually
45,
45, 50
45.
degrees. Yeah.
Okay.
Really, you can't go
Perfect.
wrong. Just don't let it freeze. If you freeze it, you're gonna stop everything from happening.
Right. My beer fridge is at 35 degrees, but my fucking regular refrigerator is 45 degrees. So I might keep it in my regular fridge than my beer fridge.
And you got to make sure you keep it inside of a light-proof bag, too, because that damn fridge light turns on every time you open that damn door. And that's just giving it light exposure.
Wait. I have something better.
Oh.
These 8 decades jars that my wife fucking created, and they're mirroring glass, so no light can go in. So I'll just keep it in the 8 decades jar.
Yep.
Me too.
Right there. And when Big Girl, when you come into town with Big Girl, I'll make sure you get a couple of these dope ass 8 decades jars from Mrs. Weedman.
I'm down. I'll fill them with something nice.
They come in different sizes too. Look, different sizes.
Don't drop them on the concrete floors.
No.
That right there is Wolfman Jack size. I like the mini.
And then we got the big
mini
boy,
jars.
the big end. Mini one?
I like the mini ones.
They're dope. They're super.
Those are perfect for hash.
When you come and press me, if Big Girl comes into town again soon, I'll give him a couple of gift you. But if you come into town one day too, you fucking come in the studio and we hang out. So, but we gotta get moving here. I love this conversation though. This is fucking great. So I want to get in the hash. I think you talked about this a little bit though. I want to get in the hash just for personal use. What do I need?
Oh man, the only thing
besides besides flour.
The only thing you really need is a press, because it's so easy to just press your flowers after your harvest. Me personally, I press all my flowers as soon as they're dry. I do not cure my flowers at all. And the reason for that is I'm preserving that color. I want a really nice color, and it's about 1,000 times easier to cure hash than it is to cure flour. You need a lot of space to cure flour. I can cure a whole shit ton of hash in one jar in my fridge and not even have to burp it one time. So it's a fine line, and when you get to play around with all this on your own with your own home grow, and you have a high quality press, you can just make some stupid high quality hash that you'll never be able to buy at any dispensary, and it'll be the best fire you've ever smoked because it's single source. There's nothing better than single source anything. You grew it, you made it, you smoked it all. It's absolutely wonderful. So buy a press. If you don't have the money for that, I would buy some bubble bags and a washer, because bubble hash is absolute fire, and all you need is a little bag of ice. Keep your temperature cold. Don't agitate. Don't add too much ice to the water. You'll create a wonderful product that you'll be happy to smoke. So it just depends on how much you're willing to invest, really, as a home hash maker, how much you're willing to invest in yourself making hash.
With the bubble bags, does it make sense to also get a freezer and fresh freeze things? I know that's kind of a whole process to go on the other side of that. So like you have bubble bags, you have your press. Now you can fresh freeze and do the, like we talked about, the live. Or do you think, or does that not matter if you're just doing bubble?
So it really depends on personal preference. If you handle your material properly and follow some strict timelines, then you can absolutely use dry material, wash bubble, and create a very nice light colored product. Most people prefer to preserve as much terpenes and cannabinoids as possible, so they want a fresh frozen live product made, and that's what most people will do. At home, it's really easy to do because you usually have extra freezer space that you can easily chop up all your buds, throw them in a Ziploc, and put them in the freezer until you're ready to use them. So you don't really need to invest.
And you said it's important how you manicure them. we should go over real quick. If you said it was important that you manicure them, right? At the end, like you want to chop off just the buds, just the sugar leaves with the cannabinoids or the terps or the oils or any of that kind of shit on it. Break it down then, because you don't want to do that after it's frozen, right? Because then it has to be unfreezing for a second.
Yes. You want to make sure you clean the product to the point where you can just throw it in your bubble bags and start washing it. So for me personally, when I harvest, I will cut off all the fan leaves. I will go through and cut off the tips of any leaves that don't have any trichomes on them, because that's what I'm extracting when I'm making bubble hash. I'm collecting all the trichomes. If there's nothing on there, that's just extra plant matter that I don't want in there. Cut all that shit off. Once I go through there, I will cut the buds off, and I'll cut them in small pieces, because that's how I want them inside the wash machine to be washed. If you have giant nugs, you're going to have a hard time washing the center of that nug. You need surface area. You need water and the temperature to be able to freeze that trichome head so it breaks off and is transported through the water.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Excuse me. Whoa. That train wreck, man. Wow.
Can I ask a question on that real quick? So when the trimming part, would you want sugar leaf, like real juicy sugar leaf with that too, or you want the sugar leaf off?
No, absolutely leave. Because
I mean, just
especially if it's fresh frozen. Yeah. If it's fresh frozen, you leave all that shit on. It saves you trimming. It saves you time. Once you get good at it and you understand completely that you're trimming this plant for hash, you can do so much trimming in a very short amount of time. It is crazy how much faster it is, because the mindset is it all gets washed. There's all good stuff. It all could be extracted, and we want that. We don't want to cut it off. We don't want to get our scissors in there and damage those trichomes, because every time you touch that bud, every time you cut off another leaf, those trichomes are getting broke open by your scissors. That's what creates scissor hash. That's broken heads that are all over your scissors. That's what we don't want as an extractor, because that's wasted product.
And your fingers too.
And your fingers, yes.
And your fingers too. And your fingers. I don't want to lose that. I want to smoke it. I can't smoke my fingers. The smell is great. Don't get me wrong. It smells phenomenal. But I don't want to lose it. No. So the less I touch it, the better.
It's a very different way to harvest and trim, and it's almost kind of hard to get used to, but once you get used to it, you get very, very fast at it. I harvested my 4x8 tent with 9 plants in it. I pressed out 24 grams of flower rosin out of 3 different strains. 3 different strains. And
dirty.
I trimmed it all. I trimmed it all myself in one day. 9 plants. So
dirty. Nice. Dirty. You're so dirty, Wolfman Jack. I love it.
I'm not gonna get up and dance. I got no rhythm.
So, Earl, you gotta ask him something on this last question. This was a good one. The trimmed up one, right? The fucking plant. Did you already ask a question?
Yeah, I just asked. Yeah, my bad.
I did that last rip, man. Yeah. That was my 12th. That was my 12th rip of a show. Hour and a half. That's hour and 15 minutes. That's pretty good for me. That's a lot of hash for myself. Like I said, I usually split the timer with Mrs. Weeman. I take 2 hits. She take 2 hits. I took 12. and I packed that bad boy too. So I'm pretty fucking. I'm high as fuck. That last one too, I lowered the temp down a little bit just to get more flavor, and it's still holding nice. Wolfman, my friend, plug away, brother. Tell us where we can find you, because people need to see some of those pictures, man. That fucking ball that you made.
Oh man,
I wouldn't mind that ball across my nose any day.
That's the good kind of ball. Hey man, you guys can find me only on Instagram lowercase w 01 lowercase f period MAN. My picture is a scrogged out weed plant, Kyle Wolfman. Check me out. Big Girl's following me, Weed Man's following me. Pretty easy to find me. I got like 400 posts. I give away all of my secrets, everything I do, all of my mistakes I've made. I talk about it all. If you want to learn anything,
that's awesome.
Come and see me, man. I'd love to talk to you. This is what I do.
I love it. I love it. And I appreciate you teaching us about hash. You taught me a lot. That one you really blew me away on, the fucking jars. And now I know I can use those 8 decades jars to put my hash in. Oh, gosh.
You're going to notice
that blew my mind.
You're going to notice a difference with
that blew my mind.
Aged hash.
Oh,
your terpenes will last so much longer. Mm-hmm. It'll taste so much better. You might even get a little bit of terpene separation where it gets a little wet that you notice, and then you might give it a little whip.
I'm excited.
You know what's a little surprising to me, or most surprising? You didn't bring up CalMag once.
You know what?
Talk about a little bit about how anybody adds any amount of CalMag, what they can do with this.
The most important thing in any solventless or butane extraction is you must filter everything with lots and lots of CalMag. Otherwise, you will never create good hash. Good hash only comes from a ton of CalMag.
Everybody out there in the world, we love you. Don't forget the CalMag. Peace!
Yeah.
Check out our cannabis lifestyle brand online at 8decades.com. Our custom smokes and accessories are perfect for your coffee table, bedroom nightstand, or kitchen counter. They're designed for you to show them off. The Canna community is also loving our hemp and cotton blend t-shirts, sweatshirts, scarves, and hats, finished off with our 8 Decades logo. We've got some awesome, long-lasting goods that will be your favorite for years to come. 8 Decades, because a 9th decade of cannabis prohibition isn't acceptable.